So this, can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. So this is, so the landing page for the tool, I guess just to flag going into it. So we've already set up a this kind of pilot site for the version of the tool that will be in Germany. So this is what you're kind of looking at the moment. I have I have done a kind of quick German to English translation. So if it reads a bit funny, that's just mainly because I don't speak German. So I'll be looking at this. So apologies for that. But just to give a feel of what this looks like. So like I said, the main version of the tool is on a separate URL. But looks kind of largely similar. And I think what we're kind of talking about in terms of this adaptation is basically doing a quite light touch adaptation where we're kind of adapting the tools for Germany. So a couple of main points there is obviously the translation side of things. So having the tool available in German, which will be translated. It will also be using German factors for the calculations in terms of the carbon emissions. So at the minute, they're obviously all based on UK figures. So the notion is to build these in. So it will be using German emissions factors and a few other bits as well. But this is kind of what the homepage looks like at the minute. Like I said, a simple thing. I guess something to flag is how the tool works is that you set up an account as an organization. So if it was Julie's Spy School or another organization, it's not kind of an individual user. So you create your account as an organization. And then basically you can add as many people to that account as you want to. So if you've got multiple people who works for your organization who want to kind of log in via one account, you can do that, and I can show you how that works. But it's set up as an organization is the main thing to flag. So just to give a feel of what's on the tool. So this is kind of the first page you'd see when you log in. So what we've got here on the left-hand side is the kind of main navigation in terms of the pages on the tools. And I guess to flag, and most importantly, is that these first 4 pages here are what a normal user would see. So anyone setting up an account just in the traditional manner. And if you have what we would call, I guess, admin privileges, there'll be some additional pages at the bottom. So only I can see these, or in the case of you guys, you will as well, but the normal users will just see these 4 pages here, which are the main pages on the tool. And just to give a quick kind of notion of what these are. So there's just the home page, which is really just a landing page and gives you basically a snapshot of any data that you already have on the account. And I'll come back to this in a moment. There's a results page, so that just shows you, again, more kind of visualizations of the data that you've entered. So in terms of your carbon impacts, and allows you to look at things like data year to year, or between different buildings, different projects, different things that you're reporting on. There's the data page, which is primarily where you'll obviously go to enter the data, so where the users can come to to set up reports and record their data. And then there's a simple documents page, which is basically to upload any kind of supporting information. So things like environmental policies, action plans, if that's kind of interest for people to log that on the account as well. So that's kind of the main 4 pages, and I'll go into the.
Will, one question. This is Jacob. I have access to an already translated version. Could you use this, or is it a different one where we have access already?
So there is it has been translated already, but basically this is just what I mean with the German side of things, is that I just have used a kind of quick translation in the browser, just so I can actually read what's going on. I mean, I can log it in the German version because I'm familiar with what the pages are anyway. I've looked at it so much that even without the language, I can probably explain what's going on.
Okay, so yeah, right.
But sorry, yeah, if that's okay. It's like I said, it probably looks a bit strange because it will have been automatically translated just using a really simple like Google Translate thing. But the translation has already been done. Yeah, by the large, just to flag.
I mean, the pieces of the pie do already have German names. So, right? Geschäftsreisen, Energie, Wasser und Abwasser und Abfall.
Yeah, what I can do is I can show you, in fact, maybe I'll just do that now just to show what it does look like, because if I do German,
There we are, exactly.
Okay.
yeah, so it's kind of like I said, I just had used this kind of simple thing here, but
Okay.
if I log in here, you should see, I think most of this is, again, it's still a kind of work in process. There's some bits to be done, but I think, yeah, it's kind of on the way in terms of that.
Good. So, but you got the translation from Gianni so far. Everything is on its way regarding the bits and pieces. Okay, good. So if there's anything missing, just let us know. We'll send it right around. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so that's good. I'm just going to switch back. Like I said, it's mainly just for my benefit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just switch back. But thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So on the, just talking about the pages again. So I'll just kind of start with the data page. Oh, Jacob's Museum is there.
Oh yeah, I already tried it out. Sorry.
No, that's good. So this is kind of what the page will look like at the moment. So what you'll see on this data page is basically the way that this is set up, and which is that as an organization, you can set up either what we call a building or a project to report on. So a building would be basically an office or a venue or a cultural building. So that could be, it could be a museum, it could be a theater, it could be a music venue. And I guess anything that's kind of a public space that you've got, audiences or people moving through versus an office. There's also projects. So this kind of would be anything else that doesn't fall into that. So there'd be indoor events, outdoor events, a tour, which so it's a trip there, must be the translation, the tour and a production. So something that's kind of on stage as such. But that's kind of how we distinguish between these two. And kind of how it works is that you set up as many or a few of these as, as relevant to your organization. You might have a head office, you might have a couple of venues you look after, you might do a series of tours, you might have, multiple events, or you might just have one building that you report on, and that's kind of what you're looking at. But basically you can kind of set up as many of these as you want to on the account, which is helpful.
Quick question, could you go to select building or select project again, because there was another drop down menu
on this
area, so select a sector.
Oh, sorry, yes, so that's select a sector. Yeah.
Okay,
So again, this is and actually it's probably worth flagging that so these are kind of sectors that are listed on here. Again, just a bit of information for us, and kind of this is a good thing to flag with the pilot, really, is that some of these categories and things here are all things that we can kind of look at in terms of whether they're suitable, whether in the German context there are certain things missing, or and things like that. So they're all things to kind of think about, and I think certainly that's the idea of the pilot, is to people to use it and see what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and kind of feedback on that. But yeah, but in terms of setting up the types, that's basically the kind of
does this selection already impact the calculation, or is this just for categorization at this point?
It's just a categorization. Yeah. So like I said, the report types, and I'll show you, look slightly different, obviously, in terms of what type of thing you're looking at, but it's really just a category for us to say, to really kind of filter the data to say if we want to look at a particular art form as such.
Is it possible to compare things of the same theme, of the same theaters and something like that you have a reference?
So you can,
something like that?
You can certainly, and I'll show you can export and kind of filter the data in those ways, which is kind of why the categories are there. So I think you can export it from the site, as I said, if you want to just look at museums or just look at theaters, or excuse me, or or something like that. But you kind of you would export it off the site at the moment in a kind of in a spreadsheet that would have all the data there, basically. But you can kind of group.
But you're using the areas for the benchmarking, is that right?
For the benchmarking, yes. So there's a couple, and I can come on to that. We have some benchmarks on the tools at the moment, which people can use to compare their results against basically an organization of a similar size, and they're based on certain metrics. So we have ones for offices, again, ones for venues, which are based on floor area. And then we have some for events as well, which are based on kind of audience days, so the visitors attending. And so we use them for those benchmarks as well.
Okay, good, thank you.
So yeah, so kind of, I guess the first thing you would do is you'd come on is you'd set up as many kind of buildings or projects that you're looking to report on. So Jacob set up a report here. And then in terms of this, no, that's good. And then basically how it works is that at the minute it's set up as kind of an annual submission. So what we would say is that once you've set up these buildings, is kind of the notion is that each year you'd come and you'd create a new report for for your buildings or for your projects, and kind of add a new year of data, which we kind of call a footprint here. So say in terms of this middle page here, you would have all the kind of buildings and projects you've already set up. So there's Jacob's Museum, there's an office that I've just set up, and kind of the idea is that you'd come and you'd add whatever year of data that you want to for that particular entity, I guess, as it were. And kind of what that happens is that once you kind of set them, it will take you up into the data entry process, which I'll show in a second. But I'll just show how this looks from a different page here. So at the top, there's a subheading here. So this is the page we're on, but there's a page called Footprints here. And if you click on this, this just gives you a different view, basically, of what's set up on the account. So you can see here, will be a list of all the buildings and all the projects that you might have set up. And then what you'll see, again, this has only just been set up, so there isn't much information here, but if you had different years of data, they would be kind of logged under each of these kind of report types. So again, here's the building that Jacob set up, here's an office I set up, and kind of, yeah, if you had multiple years of data, you'd kind of see these going down the page, and you can kind of come and edit and have a look at the data that's there. But there's nothing on projects at the minute, but yeah, that's kind of how a simple way of keeping track of what you have set up on the account, as it were. So what I might do, if I do just a venue. So I'm just going to set up quickly a venue just to show you what this looks like when you come into the reports, and I won't go through each of these because they vary slightly, but they're largely set out the same way. So this is what you'll see in terms of actually entering data into the system. So you'll enter a report which has different tabs across the top here, which are basically the different impact areas, and these will kind of vary slightly between the different report types. So an office is slightly different to a venue, an event is different to a tour. But by and large, they're covering kind of similar things. So certainly for buildings, what we're talking about is kind of energy, so power consumption, water use, waste. There's also business travel and audience travel and fleet travel as well. So different types of travel that you can report on. And basically kind of the idea is that you kind of work through the report and you fill in as much information as you have available. It might be that people don't have all the information that's listed here, but it's kind of all included there. And so I'll just kind of show you how that works. But in terms of the first page, you'll see a kind of general tab, and this just has some kind of basic information about this report you're setting up. So obviously the year that that the data is referring to. I might just change that. There's some information about the name, there's contact details, and then there's some information in the case of buildings and events about the kind of scale of, or details about the building, sorry. So in terms of venue, there's things like the floor
Could you
area.
just type in some data that we'd see it once? I think it might help. Just
yeah, sure.
The process would be great. Because
so,
I did it already and it helps the others to see.
Sure. So this is information about, say, the size of the venue, so floor area. So you can switch between this. So if I enter some information here, I might have, let's say this is a museum in terms of the type of venue, age of the venue. Let's say it's very old. Property, and then you kind of come into some other information. This is mainly for the public buildings about things like attendance. So again, if you've got something like a theatre or a a museum, to say, you know, how many tickets have you sold, or visitors to the venue. So I don't know, you might have somebody here. You can also enter different spaces that you might occupy within the building. So again, if you've got, you know, a couple of stages or performance spaces, so you might have like your main stage and a side room, say, and you can enter things like, you know, the capacity of those stages, of those places, and the number of events you might run throughout a year, say. So it's really metrics and kind of some context setting in terms of the information around the building. There's additional information, so things like how many days is the building open, number of full-time employees, things like that. So yeah, so kind of really this information is more helpful once you've provided the kind of carbon data in terms of metrics and ways of looking at the data in terms of the context of the building. And then kind of as you go through, basically what the tool will do is do the calculations in terms of emissions. So really what we're asking the user for is the consumption figures in terms of these different impacts. So in the case of energy, say for buildings, if we're talking about electricity and gas, it's really the kilowatt hours that you've used over, you know, over the year that you're reporting on. And then the tool will calculate the emissions of that. So in the case of electricity use, so if again, I just put a figure in here, something for gas that's made up. And there's a few different options here in terms of type of energy. Obviously for events and festivals, there's more options around things like generators. So if you're using diesel generators, biodiesel, whatever it might be, and that there are other options there. But kind of, yeah, you'd come through and enter these consumption figures that you'd have, and then basically as you kind of save and go through the report, so if I just do this now, you'll see on the top right that the kind of emissions are connected to this building, excuse me, will kind of automatically update as you go. So you can kind of see what's happening as you kind of save and go through the report, which is helpful. So you can kind of go through. So water, so again, this
question for power consumption. If you
yes.
go back one, so you have the main power consumption, and then if you scroll down, you had something on green energy, information on the green electricity tariff. So how does that work in case you have you're getting green energy?
Yes, so in terms of the way that the tool is set up at the minute, we on the main version of the tool, we have an option basically for users just to select whether they're using a green tariff or not with their supplier. And then actually we have an option where they can select different UK energy suppliers that they're with. Again, just to give us a feel of who their supplier is with. In terms of the calculations at the minute, it doesn't impact those calculations. So we always use the kind of grid factor, the average factor in terms of the calculations. But on the main version of the tool, there is an option where you can have a look at what your electricity emissions would be if you're taking into account the supplier factor of the particular supplier that you're using. And that's what we do on the main version. So it won't impact the kind of overall footprint of this report, but there is a way of seeing what that impact is, and kind of it's mainly, again, a piece of I guess a piece of evidence or information about what those users are doing, and you know who's sourcing renewable energy, who's on a green tariff, who's on a particular supplier, and we kind of use that information more as a bit of a case study or keeping a track of what people are doing. But there is a way of kind of seeing the effects on the impact on the emissions, sorry. But the kind of default is that it will always use the default average grid factor. So obviously for the UK, but in this case it would be for Germany. And again, it might be something to think about kind of in the future as to whether what would be useful or helpful is to, again, whether it would be helpful to have something like, again, different suppliers available in Germany, different options there, and think about what we could maybe do in the future with it. But that's kind of how it's set up at the minute.
Yeah. I guess right now it's for like starting, it's not a big issue, but we know from experience that a lot of the institutions think about it, or at least want to aspire to getting these kind of power deliveries, and then it should be able to factor that in. Also, depending on how accurate you want to have your calculation, you have regional differences in the various mixes of what you get in terms of energy. I guess that would be a little overkill at this stage, but yeah, it's because it's, if you look at a theater, for example, they have around about 2 million kilowatts, and then it can have a big impact.
Max, the big challenge with the standard itself is asking for grid mix always, because still the discussion is on if green energy is calculated as 0 or whatever it's calculated. So technically you're using a kilowatt hour from the grid, even if you're buying a green tariff. This is why there is that thing. If you scroll down, Will.
Sorry.
So you can type in you're using a green tariff, and there is another thing a bit more upwards. It's called beyond carbon, because we are absolutely clear. So we want them to move into green tariffs, but coming from a standard point of view, green tariff doesn't mean 0 emissions with the carbon.
No. I'm aware. Yeah.
It's a challenge, and the more data we get, the more data we can file in. So in the UK, they have regional data. The thing with the German market is it's next to impossible to get regional data from everyone. And the challenge right now, if you would have it only from 3 providers, then the other providers would say, okay, this is unfair. They have a better blah, blah, blah. So we decided to go with the standard as of now.
Yeah, just in terms of, like these tools, especially if it's adapted now, there's probably going to be like a maintenance process or something in place to look out for these things that will have to be implemented in the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, cool.
And just to say, actually, just quickly on that, is that we're doing a similar project in Canada at the minute, actually doing a kind of version of this tool, and that's something that they have looked at. Is the region, obviously it's at the size of the country, but the regional split in terms of certainly energy, because again it varies quite significantly. And again, I think they were fortunate in that Canada had quite good public records of what those splits were. But yeah, certainly it's something to think about anyway. For a later stage. Yeah.
No, it's just also for us, when we go and we promote the tool, we will get these kind of questions. So we just need to know what So good, thanks.
So just again, just kind of going through. So on next one is water consumption. Again, this is still thinking about a building. So again, the kind of consumption figures. This is really information that you should get in a basic bill, or if you've got meter readings. So again, I'll just put something in. So for water consumption and wastewater, I'll put something in there. For waste, so there's a couple of options here. So this is kind of split between a few different waste streams. So waste to landfill, waste to energy, waste to recycling, and composting. And basically, there's a couple of options here where either you can enter a kind of tonnage figure for waste. So if you have a contractor or a waste company that provides bills in the same way for energy, you might have that figure. A lot of people don't, or this is our experience in the UK, is that people don't have as good records. So something we kind of added in was an estimate option, where basically we kind of listed a few options where you can say, okay, if you know that you have a certain number of bins that get collected every month or every week that are a particular size, is that you can kind of enter that and use that as a way to calculate this. Again, if you don't have good records on waste. So again, you might say, in the case of this venue, I might say, okay, I've got, say 4 bins of a particular size that get collected monthly. So you would kind of enter just what would those collections per month, and basically the tools then will calculate across the whole year what that would mean in terms of the emissions and the amount of waste. So again, it's just a way of kind of simplifying that process. So if I save this, actually.
One more question at this stage. What's the waste of energy referring to? The other one?
This is the German thing translated back into English. It means
energy from waste, right?
Energy from waste. Also this
is thermische Verwertung.
Yeah. So if you know that your waste goes into thermische Verwertung, and we are looking at the German tool now, but translated back into English, which is weird.
Yeah, sorry.
I was stumbling on that.
That's my fault. Yeah.
No worries.
But please put in some data just for the fun of it that we see. Some
Yeah, no, sure. I might do go back to actual this, but I'll just put something in. Okay. And then the next is audience travel of this section. So this is kind of an interesting one. So the way this is set up, and this is obviously, it's just for venues or for events, but this is listed where you've got different transport types. And basically this is kind of uses some of the information you've already entered in the first page around, number of tickets sold or the size of your audience. And basically what we ask users here to do is enter information about the percentage of their audience and the ways that they're traveling. So kind of what you'd say is, okay, if you have done a survey of your audience and you know that, okay, say, 80% of the audience are traveling by car to our event, and the rest are traveling by train, let's say, in there. You can enter these figures, and basically it will use the number of visitors and the size of the audience to kind of estimate what that means in terms of your audience travel emissions.
This is good. So you help them with scope 3 emissions very well. Lovely. Can you just type in some data that we see?
Yeah, I'm just going to see. I'm not sure if this one is up, and oh no, it is. That's good. It's running. Yeah, that's
so
good.
The calculation now is done on the average visitors per year and the mobility split, which applies by that. Very well. Good. Yeah.
And just to say that, again, this probably is translated weirdly, but there's an option at the top here where if people don't have, if they haven't surveyed an audience, they don't know what, how their audience is traveling. There's an option where you can basically use an estimate, which will basically, again, kind of as Jacob just said there, just use the information in terms of the size of your audience, and based on some research we did a few years ago, give you an estimate figure based on that audience in terms of typical ways that people will travel. So again, it will give you an estimate figure that will probably be it will be quite big because it usually favors everyone traveling by car, but it will give you an indication as to the size.
Can you just
of that
do
impact.
it? Did we see how it changes, please?
Yeah. So if I get rid of this and do that. It's gone away.
It went
yeah,
away.
I might need to check that one anyway, because I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure if this one was up and running yet. But
Okay.
I'll put this back in for now. But yeah, effectively, it's to. What was I doing? It was to give a bit of an option if people haven't collected this data, because typically we found that it's not one that not as many people have data on, basically.
Technically, the return trip means to and from the venue. Is that right?
Yes, that would be true. Yeah. So again, you can
the
add
whole distance.
And you can add this in. If you have that information, again, you can just use the percentages. But if you have additional information, such as the average, the distance in terms of where people are traveling, again, it can kind of factor those things into the calculation, which is helpful.
Okay, so the more data you have, the more precise the result will become.
Exactly.
So if you have a survey amongst your visitors, and then you can really break it down, or you're using very rough estimates. Okay, lovely. Yeah.
2 questions there. First of all, do you happen to have a template questionnaire in order for institutions to kind of get insight in their
We have a not quite a template, but we have a guide which has a kind of slightly unhelpfully, we have a guide around audience travel which has a kind of an example of a way to kind of record this information, which is really aligned with what this is, but it's basically a kind of an image within that report, if that makes sense. So it's not a kind of Word document that we have kind of separate, but there is a kind of example of, okay, this is what a survey could look like, and this is kind of how you could. So I can share that in terms of, and that's aligned, kind of aligned with how you enter data here. So that's something we usually share, just to say if people are doing this for the first time, kind of that's what they can look at.
Yeah, Michael, Niels, do you know of anything we would have in terms, because I could, looking at the tons of CO2 emissions, obviously this is going to be a big one. And so I guess that if we want to get a good estimate for the institutions, this is also something within the pilot that we could help with. Yeah, as Will says, usually the institutions don't have much experience with that. So I could think of trying to help them provide to get this data assessed would be something that we could be doing. Michael, have you looked into this kind of topic?
We have a questionnaire that we use for our events from the Energy Agency. That works online, and so the audience can say which way they try and which traffic
I know what you mean.
use.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the second question would be, so we have the default settings here. You said, Will, that there's a study from a few years back, which is probably done in the UK, I guess?
Yes, I think it was, yeah.
Because it might make sense to check if we can find comparable data for Germany, because I guess the traffic infrastructure whole shebang will be quite different from, in Germany from the UK. So it might be good to exchange those figures for German figures if available, obviously.
We're already working on it.
Perfect, cool.
Nice trying.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, so the next two, so this is for business travel. So we would kind of classify this as kind of non-commuter work-related travel that you might do as an organization. So if you're traveling, you work in an office, but you travel for an event, it could be a training, it could be a piece of work that you're kind of the travel that you do, outside of your office. And the way that this is listed is, again, similar to before, it's different vehicle types, and then really we're asking for the distance traveled and the number of people traveling in some cases. So in terms of the options here, again, you can switch between, say, things like obviously kilometers and miles. There's an option, most of this is done by distance traveled, but there is an option for things like, so the translation is weird, this, for certain of the cars and things where you can switch it, so and enter by fuel.
It means car, and it retranslated into Wagen, to dare.
Oh,
Wagen.
Is that? I was looking for. I was like, quite. I don't know what that
Wagen,
means.
and it translated back into English into to dare. I was like, that's interesting.
No, that's weird.
Wagen,
yeah.
auto, car, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, that's the one I was looking for. So that's good. So like I said, this is set at the minute, and you can switch between different vehicle types in terms of fuel. So petrol, diesel, hybrid, electric. And then you can enter. So the miles that you might have travelled, or alternatively. If you collect data differently, some people have the fuel that the amount of petrol that they've used in cars. Sometimes people record that, so there's an option for doing that as well. But I'll keep that in terms of distances. So if I just add a couple here,
And the data in the back is the UK average of CO2 emissions of a vehicle.
No, we collected German emission factors.
Okay, I think they are bigger.
Yeah.
So if I do that.
Yeah, with the help of Michael and his colleagues, we already translated the emission factors, and some are quite similar and others are very different. Very different in comparison to the UK. And we have to double check these because they are differing a lot.
Right, I'll just show this one because this is kind of a little bit different. So for flights, there's an option here where there's basically a kind of a system in here where you can type in the cities. Again, so if you don't have if you've got flights listed between cities but you don't know the distances, you can put in, say, London to wherever I'm going. Let's say Berlin. I was going to say, and whether it's a single or a return trip. I might just put London to Berlin. And then basically it will ask you for the number of passengers and the way that they're traveling. So if you've got people flying economy class or business class or first class, so if I say 2 people are flying, and you can enter data like that, which is helpful. Or alternatively, If you just know the miles, you don't have to do it like this.
Please add the data. This is interesting because you have a flights calculator in the back. This is great, lovely. Wow, didn't know that.
So so that's there, but you can also add if you just want to do it manually. So again, maybe you don't want to do every single flight individually, but you know that we did so many miles. You can just enter it like that alternatively, which is helpful. But this is something that we've just kind of added in, so that we're still doing a bit of work on it, but it's just to make it, because I think that was one that people reported back, that flights can be a bit tricky to enter in certain ways. So that's one thing there.
Please save it that we see how it changes.
Oh, nice.
That's lovely. Yeah.
And then vehicle fleet. So this is set up the same way, but the distinction is really just to say this is meant to be vehicles that you own as a company. So if you own, vans, lorries, whatever you might do, and this is more a categorization thing for us, just so we can see in the end result that the different ways that you're traveling. So I might just again put something in here, just so we've got something.
And interesting, if you scroll down, because what I love about your tool, it works as a data collection as well. You can always add comments, and something is missing, you can leave remarks for other people, like please get data for vans. So it's a work in progress thing, which is really good.
Yeah. Oh, and actually I didn't show here, but if you for any of these vehicle ones, as you go, if you can enter things singly, or if you do want to add, you can add additional rows if you want to do different journeys. Yeah.
Is it possible to name them, or is it just a list?
So you can, at the minute, you can only name them for, I think it's for train journeys and flights. So there isn't a naming option for.
So you can't say car of the chef and car of the production team and car of. So yeah, okay.
So not currently, no. And again, that's another thing. These are all good things to think about in terms of what's helpful. So at the minute, I think it's just trains and flights that you can name in that way.
Okay.
Yeah. And this will be translated weirdly, I'm sure. So beyond carbon. So this is the last kind of page, and there's a version of this in each of the reports, and I guess the story behind this is that we added this in as a bit of a survey, or of a checklist, or of a way of people recording more information about what they're doing in their organization, and kind of beyond just the data and the emissions. And it was really a bit of an exercise for us to capture more about what they're doing. So this is kind of set up really just as a simple checklist, really looking at different areas where we ask some sort of simple questions about things they're doing. So, things around energy, water, waste, food. There's different sections here, but it's really just a simple kind of, yes, we are, we're not doing, yes, we are, or no, we're not doing certain things. And it's kind of split into a few different areas. So like I said, there's kind of what we said, everyday good practice in a few different areas. There's some bits about policy and strategies, roles and responsibilities, investment, some stuff around creative programming. And I can send a list of what these kind of questions are, but it's really just, again, to capture a bit more information about the users and what people are doing, because we used to do a separate survey for everyone, which people responded to, which kind of works, but we thought, oh, maybe we can just incorporate, so people can record some of this information as they go, which just would make it a little bit easier for us. And I think for them as well, rather than doing this kind of separate survey process. So it's something that we've kind of started last year, and we're doing a new version of it at the moment, actually. But again, it might be one to think about in terms of the kind of questions there, because I'm sure there'll certainly be some regional things or German specific things that you think, okay, it'd be good to ask about that, or this question doesn't make any sense in our context and things like that. But it's just one to think about anyway. But that's kind of that's it, in a nutshell what that section is. So if I might just
does this have any impact on the CO2 emissions, or is it just a survey?
It's just a survey. Yeah.
Okay.
And do you analyze this in relation to what's put into the calculations? Like, do you try to extract from this that you see, for example, something changed there in a lot of institutions, and then you see with regard to the energy consumption or something?
Not quite at this stage,
Okay.
because I think it would be a bit of a jump. I think it's not. I don't think it would be a huge amount of evidence for it.
I get that, but it would be potentially interesting to look at that.
The interesting thing is, Maximilian, and you remember we had it yesterday during your presentations, that I like that part because we are not only focusing on the carbon here.
Yeah.
So because this is always the thing, when we dip too deep into carbon footprinting, then somebody says, but how is it about blah, blah, blah? And I love to have that in because it starts the discussion. So we can engage with them in further issues beyond carbon. And this is why I love it so much to have it in here.
And I think we, with I didn't mention it, but we do a project with Arts Council England in the UK, where they have about 800 organizations who report using through the main version of the tools, and we kind of write a report for the Arts Council each year, and this has been really great for that, because we kind of, again, we can collectively look at the responses over those 800 and say, whereas we might not specifically link it to certain emissions, it's still very interesting to say, okay, of that 800, how many again are on a green tariff, how many are doing X, Y, and Z, or have made certain commitments. And it's a really nice additional kind of qualitative bit of information about what they're doing, again in line with kind of the emissions and things like that. So it's been really helpful.
And you can see the what's happened in the last years and what's happening now, and you can compare that and see how the progression works in the last years over the whole sector. That's very nice.
So once you get to the end, there's basically a submit option. So you, like I said, as we've done, you can kind of save as you go along, but there's a submission option at the end, which what that does is it saves everything on the account, but also it will send us, JB, and actually this is a question to think about, will send us a little notification just saying that this organization has submitted their results, and we keep a track of that coming through. And actually that's something where, for this kind of pilot version, we can talk about that separately, but about where that might want to go to in terms of if you want to have this kind of.
Well, this would need to go to us, because otherwise we have no idea who is working in the pilot.
Yeah, no, sorry, I mean in terms of which contact from you guys, in terms of who wants to receive those emails, basically. But that's one thing it would be good to look at.
Are these, what is your experiences? Does these submissions come with lots of questions, or do they basically work with it? What's your experience with that?
I think it's so the submission is just an automated email. It will just say, someone's made a submission. I think in terms of people getting in touch and needing support, I'd say yes, if people are doing it for the first time, they usually have a fair amount of questions. I mean, that's why we do things like the trainings, the webinars and things, is to try and almost try and tackle as many of those questions, in one bulk rather than individually answering every question. But I think it really depends. I think if people are doing it for the first time, they tend to have, a lot of questions. I think once someone's gone through the process once, it's less so. People get kind of familiar with it. At least that's been the experience with it. But I think definitely having someone who can provide a bit of support or just query a few things, and sometimes it's really simple things. It's they've selected the wrong thing, or they've entered some, they can't remember how to get. So, I mean, most of the time the questions are very simple, but it's still it's more about them getting confused with where they're entering data and things like that. But it's one of those, I think.
Because we are still in the midst of coming up with a good idea, good strategy towards that process, because in the phase there will be obviously lots of questions, and we'll have a workshop, we'll have a training, but we're in the midst of understanding how to set up a support structure which is not overburdening our existing system. Because if we announce a telephone number and then they call you like 3 times a day, then that's the only thing you do.
Yeah, I mean, I might just quickly see if I can show you this. I can log in. this is not to frighten you, but just to show what they look like. But basically, we have a specific email for all the queries that come through about the tools. And the submissions just basically look like this, which is they come through and they just say, hello, they say, hello, this person has requested a review and this is some information about their account. So and I guess we don't check every single, so for the Arts Council project, we have, as part of the agreement with that, we do check and go through every submission, but for other users, we do that more sporadically. So we don't check every single report that comes through if we have no association with them, basically. So it's kind of one, it's one to think about anyway. So I've just submitted that report. And like I said, that kind of saves everything, but also it means that
sorry, it tells you something is missing, which is good. Okay, lovely. Come back later.
So I forgot that. Yeah, so this will flag up certain bits it's mainly in the first tab actually, in terms of values that are missing from the report. And again, I think there's only a few that are flagged here, but it might be the case that you think.
This is why the default numbers didn't show up, because you didn't add the number of days.
Oh, yes, it might be. That's true. Yeah. And yeah, so that's kind of helpful. And like I said, once you've submitted it, it means that you can see this information in the results pages when we go back there, and also it will kind of be incorporated in the kind of home page that we've seen there. So I might just go back to this page here, and so what you can see now is this is that report I've just set up. So there's the venue, that's that submission I've just made here. And then if we go to the results pages, I'm going to show you what that looks like. So this is what you can see on these pages. So there's a few different options here. So there's a summary page, which will give you, this is all the data that you have on the account. So this will be all the buildings, all the projects that you might have. So I think in the case of what we just said, it's just 2 buildings here, but you can get a sense of what those impacts are kind of collectively. So again, across the different impacts there. So energy, water, waste, certain types of travel. You can also kind of play around with these graphs in terms of, expanding certain bits if you want to have a look at what's here, which is quite helpful. And all of this information is, the graphs or the tables you can kind of download the images, download the tables, which is quite helpful for the users as well. So like I said, this is for all of the buildings or projects that are on there. If you go to the compare section, again, apologies, since we've only just set this up, there isn't a huge amount of data that goes back multiple years, but what you could see here is if we had data going back several years, it would be listed along this table here. So you could see data, going back multiple years. And also what you can do here is select, an individual project or building that you want to look at if you don't want to look at things collectively. So if I just want to look at that venue that we just set up, I can select on here, and you can, again, look at the kind of emissions for the different areas. Something that's also helpful is here, you can also select the different metrics. So again, if you want to look at things by floor area, by visitor number, by performance, tickets sold, whatever it might be.
Can you just show it once?
Sure, yeah. So if I select this, it will, it will look the same on here, but in terms of so these figures at the bottom are now by meters squared. And again, this looks clearer when you have multiple years of data, because you can see how that varies.
Okay.
But it will basically, you can kind of switch between these different ones here, which is helpful between kind of absolute and relative figures, which obviously is important to give the kind of trends of what's going on, which is great. So the detail page, so this is quite simple. So this will just, try to select that venue. This will give a list of basically just all the data that you've entered in that report. So again, in the different sections, so energy, water, it will just give you the kind of consumption figures that you entered and the relative emissions, but just kind of break it down so you can have a look. So again, if you want to look at certainly things like travel, you can see where, what that split is and what's happening there. which is kind of helpful. And again, this information can be.
I have to run to the door. Hold on.
Can
Continue.
be.
Just need to. Sorry.
That's fine. Yeah, I was just going to say again, you can download or export any of this information, which is quite helpful. And actually, just to say, because I think we haven't decided what quite to do with this yet, but so this actually is the graph that I mentioned before, that in the UK version, there's an option where you can select your supplier, energy supplier, and it will show you what your energy supplier is, what the electricity emissions are like compared to the the average figure, but also a kind of zero emissions picture. So at the minute, obviously, we don't have the suppliers listed. So this is just showing the kind of grid figure. So we might remove this graph. I think that's optional, basically, whether we keep it or not. But usually in the UK version, there would be a third column here, which would show that the specific supplier that the user had selected, just to give them an indication of where their supplier is compared to the average, basically. So that's what that graph is.
I got one question of collecting data. Is it any different between projects and buildings? Or what are the specific differences of the collection and on which data is going? Yeah, thank you.
I'll just quickly show. So they do vary slightly, but they are largely like the categories are largely the same as effects. So there'll always be a kind of general tab where you're entering information about the obviously the period that you're looking at. In terms of events, there's different categories in terms of things like the size of the event and tickets sold, and these things look slightly different. So in terms of what's here, and also in terms of the impact areas, so these will vary between the report types. Like I said, for say an office, you won't have something like audience travel, obviously. For events, so for tours, sorry, that they'll be slightly different, but in terms of the way you enter data, it'll always be kind of the same. So again, for energy, there'll still be options around mains power use, there'll be diesel options, and this is largely set up. I think there's a few more options here than for the venue, but the process is effectively the same, is that you kind of you go through here. So water, again, waste is the same.
Is there an option for the artists, how they will get to it? And if you got a big festival and the main act is coming from Australia, flying there from the last gig, and that's for big festivals, it's a big impact on the CO2 emissions. So
yeah, so it's I'd say it's not set up in that way at the moment, I guess is what I'd say about that. But and I think this is the tricky thing. And again, I think to think about the tricky thing with it is that the reports are set up in certain ways. Like I said, we group them in these ways that are, offices, venues, events. But you often with things like travel, when people, have had similar points like that, where they said, okay, they want to record their production travel or a particular set of people. And basically it's one of those funny things where you can report it, but you've kind of got to do it within the confines of the way that it's set up. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself, but that, you could set up a new report that is just the travel of your artists or just the travel of your production crew. It just doesn't quite neatly fit into one of those boxes, and that's probably one thing to think about, is what would be helpful, because I know we do some work with Festival Republic, who do some of the big UK festivals like Reading and Leeds and festivals like that, and what they do actually, and that's kind of, they've sort of done that on their own initiative, but they would do a report using the event tool, but then they set up separate reports for the travel associated with their productions. So again, it's not the tidiest thing in the world, but that's how they do it. But I think it's thinking about what works and what doesn't work, and kind of how do we make it as useful or as easy to use as possible, I guess.
Yeah, when we can communicate it like that and explain how to do it, then it's all right and all okay, and you can have it through the projects and just name it like that. That's also okay.
Okay.
A little bit workaround. So
yeah,
so
yeah,
okay.
exactly. Okay, great. I think the last thing I was going to show on this was just, and I think they might be turned off at the minute because and actually that's another point to flag. They are turned off, so I can't show them. But we also have the what would be the benchmarks that I mentioned that are UK based. That's a question, is that we can list them on here if we want to, but they are based on UK figures. So I think at the minute we're not listing them here, but we can do. And again, that basically just gives you an option to look at your event or your building based on a certain metric against other data that's on the system. So you can say, you know, if I've got a venue of a particular size, this is what my energy, consumption is like compared against that, which is quite helpful. But like I said, they are UK based figures. So that's kind of an optional thing in terms of whether they're shown here or not.
Would it be helpful, or like, is it thinkable that we can have benchmarks for Germany in the future, when we're collecting the data in the coming years, that we can also have, like, then you can compare it to the British benchmark, and then we're building up a German benchmark? That would be useful, I think.
I think that it would be great for that to be an ambition of the project to work towards that. I think the tricky thing with benchmark is that you need, for them to be worthwhile, you need a lot of data, or you need a certain proportion for them to be kind of worthwhile. So I think it might be a longer term kind of plan, assuming that it depends how many people end up using the tool really, but you want to have a certain amount of data obviously to be working with, a certain number of people reporting for
Sure.
benchmark really to be kind of useful to people. But I think it's definitely would be great to kind of think about that and think about how to ultimately end up there, I guess. I just think, particularly in the first year, I imagine with the amount of people reporting, you're not going to get quality data that's going to really support that, I imagine.
No, sure, but we should, maybe we'll talk about it later, how to set the foundation for that we can classify it from the beginning. Yeah, that we can benchmark it in a few years.
Sure. And then just to say, so this is going back to the homepage. So again, this just, like I said, just shows you what the data that you've kind of most recently entered. So again, this is showing, so the two buildings that are on here at the minute. So I just set up that venue, which is listed here. And you can kind of see, again, all the data that's kind of on here. And it's just kind of what you'll see when you log in. And there's also a thing for the documents, which is just very simple. It just says, it's basically just environmental policies or action plans. And you can kind of upload a document just to have it on the system. And that's mainly a product of our Arts Council work, where we request that they provide a policy and an action plan. So that's something that we kind of built into the tool. Again, it might be something that's not, it's not needed or not useful, but at the minute it's still there that you can upload a document if you want to. And then that would just show that here, that there's an environmental policy on the site. But I think it's kind of helpful to have it all together anyway, and encourage people to keep them together. So that's kind of the main user functions, I guess, in terms of these 4 sections here. I know we're over the time limit. I'm not sure how much time people have got, because I don't know if we want to also talk about the admin pages, or if people have to shoot. I'm not sure what people's availability is.
I would like to hear something about that, and I got some time left.
Please, yeah, I'm fine.
Sure. Yeah, there's not a huge amount, so I'll just quickly show. So on the admin account, so this is what I can see and what you guys will be able to see in terms of what's here. I haven't translated, but I can guess what's going on. So there's a few pages here. So the first of which is basically a list of organizations. So obviously there's only The only account on here at the minute is this kind of test account we've set up. But basically, once people start setting up accounts and creating accounts, they'll all be listed here. So as an admin user, you can come, click on this, and you can go and look at people's accounts, look at their data and this is where you'd access them through here, which is quite helpful. There's also an option, and this hasn't been set up, and actually, no, I'll come back to this because that'll make more sense in a second. So this is an export sheet. So this is kind of where we would do a big group export of the data that's on the system. And again, you can kind of pick how you categorize that data. But this is kind of what we do, certainly when we do our Arts Council work, is that we, come in for a particular year again and say, what year are we looking at? And basically export the data that we need. So again, the way that it works is that if you put in a year and you don't specify anything else, it will basically just export everything that you have into one big massive sheet. But you can also be more specific. So again, if you want to select particular sectors to export, if you want to select particular report types, so you just want to look at all the events, you just want to look at the offices. You can also select individual organizations. Again, there's only one listed here, but if you've got a group of organizations, you want to just export their data collectively. And there's a few options here. So, and basically once you kind of select that and export it, it will list, basically an Excel sheet will appear here, and you'll be able to, get an export of the data, which is quite helpful. On the conversion factors, so this is showing the current factors, which this has not been updated, I don't think. But these are still the UK factors at the moment. But actually, Jacob just sent me through some information yesterday or the day before, which is great. So we'll be updating all of these with the German factors where appropriate. But basically, what you'll see here is just a list of all the different.
I have one question regarding that. Would it be possible to just for the admin page to show the UK factors next to the German ones, because just to be sure that we're not too far away from each other? Would it be possible to add another column?
So you can. What's on here at the minute? Again, these are the same, but there's an option to switch between. They're labeled slightly weirdly, but there's an option to switch between. So. If you wanted to look at the English ones, you could flick back and it will show you what they are in comparison. Like I said, these haven't been updated yet. So you can toggle between them. They're not obviously next to each other. I can ask the developer whether that's possible, but you can at least toggle between. Or you will be able to toggle between what they are in terms of the factors listed.
Good, so once if we change something here, will it change it for the users? This is important to know, that we never play around here.
So yes, so if these are are live changes. So in terms of that list that you've sent through, Jacob, and once we're happy with what factors we've got, we'll enter them into here, and there's an option to save it. And kind of once you've done that, it will straight away have an impact then on the users and the calculations. So these are. I guess an important thing to think about is obviously that's why only the admin people can see this. But any changes or tweaks that you do here will impact the calculations.
Okay, so this is important not to play around here because it will fuck up everything then if we do it wrong.
And then and then we keep obviously a offline list of what those factors are, just to check them every now and then, just to make sure that nothing's something strange has happened. But
another question here for the factors. If let's say that, I don't know in what kind of intervals you check the factors for the UK, for example, but since the, let's say, energy mix changes from year to year, are the historical data, is that saved in the reports? So does it adjust automatically, or does it adjust retrospectively as well?
So we in the UK, every year, I think it's in the end of summer, there's basically the government releases a set of factors for the UK, which is very lucky actually, in terms of those factors, and we kind of update them on the tools, and they so in terms of the reports, yeah, they vary each year based on the changing of the factors. So again, if you've got data that goes back multiple years, it's kind of linked to the year that you've set the reports up, which makes it really important. If you want to have the correct calculations, you've obviously selected the correct year.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you said it's live factors, so I was wondering if you changed them here, that it would change the previous years as well.
Yeah, so only in the report that you've set up. So if you've got like 5 years of data or something, and it will just match it to whatever year you've selected.
Okay,
so it won't
good.
change all of them. It will just
All
change
right.
like that 1 year that you've entered, if that makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
And then it's just in terms of when the factors come out, because actually I didn't mention this, but there's an option to on the account. So actually, if I go onto here just quickly, so in the top right here, there's a organizational account thing, which just has some settings about the account that you have on. This is basically the information that you enter when you set up an account. And actually there's an option to select what year, what year you report on. So whether it's the calendar year that goes January to December, or our financial year, which goes April to March. And that's partly because for the Arts Council work, they ask everyone to report April to March, and so we set people up to report that way. So kind of you can select which way you want to report, and I'm not sure what the preference is, but whether again in this annual way you want to just use the calendar year, or whether you want to use some kind of financial year that might be different to the one we've got set up anyway. But in terms of the factors, it kind of they apply. I always get it wrong in my head, but it's so yeah, the 2019 factors are 2019 and 1920, or the other way. I always forget, but yeah, they kind of, the factors are applied across both ways basically.
Not bad.
So that was the factors. Yeah, so these are being updated. Translations, so this is what's kind of going on at the moment, and basically what you have here is just basically all the static text that is on the site. So there'll be the English, what was the English version listed on the left, and then the translation on the right, which is all editable. So this is what's kind of been looked at the moment. Obviously there's a lot of information here, but you can kind of come and tweak and edit anything here, and then there's an option to save it at the bottom. So
yeah, I think the most of it is already translated by us, and hopefully we're using the pilot phase to find the weird sentences in the backend, which you usually don't see at the very first time. But if you scroll down, most of it should be translated already.
Yeah, I believe so. Which is
I do have 3 or 4 things that I didn't know what were meant with, but I'll ask after the demo if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So that's on the translations, and then
what is, for example, the ACE admin?
Oh, so that's a page that isn't on, and I guess that's and I might look at if we can remove that. So there's a few additional pages that are on the UK version of the tools that we've just hidden or removed effectively from the pilot, but they kind of still exist. I think that they still exist technically on the site, but they've just been hidden. Just because they're not relevant basically, so because they're related to the Arts Council program that we do and things like that. So there might be a couple of things that are listed here, and I might see if I can remove them actually, just to avoid confusion.
The ACE admin is the Art Council England admin, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Oh,
so they have a separate page where people who work for the Arts Council can log in via, and that's a separate thing that we have on the UK version. But it's
there is another question, Will. It says 2022 translations. Is there any way that we could see if we forgot something? Would it mean 10 translation missings, or should we always scroll down everything?
So I think it's.
I mean, it's not a big problem, just a question.
Yeah, I don't think there's a clever way of doing it, because I think part of the not the problem, but I think basically years ago, as you know, years ago we did an adaptation of the tool, and so some translation was done, and then I think what was in the interim, what was done is we did a really basic Google translation of everything, just so something was there. So I think technically all these boxes are filled, but I think part of the translation process was really checking to make sure that things actually made sense, and it wasn't like a stupid translation that was done. So I think the tricky thing is that probably there will be something listed in every box. It's just whether something makes sense. And I think, like you said, I think really when people start testing it and start using it, that's when it will flag up to say,
that sounds weird.
That sounds weird, or I've spotted a random English word in the middle of a sentence, or something like that. That's
good.
And the last thing I would say on this user point, and actually maybe if I go back to this, so I mentioned that you set up the account as an organization, and then you add what you do is you add users to the account, and just to quickly show how that works. So at the top here, there's an option, and basically what you do is you'd add in an email address. So I won't actually add myself, but if I put my how do you spell my email there, and kind of add it, what it will do is it would send me an email saying that I've been added to this account on the tools, and then it will give me a link, and it will say follow the link and set up your own login, and then basically if I did that on here, I could add another user, and you can add as many of these as you want to. So again, if you want different people on the account, you can add people here.
Can all these users then get access to our administrator backend? No.
Good. So Good. This will just give you like a user login.
Good.
So a user login, you'll just see
Lovely
the 4 pages here. But and that's why I wanted to come back to this as the last point. This isn't set up properly yet, but basically there'll be an option here on this user tab where you can change the privileges of each individual. So again, by default, when people are added, they'll just become a normal user, and they'll be able to see these pages. But there'll be an option where you can give someone the admin privileges if you want to, and then they'll be able to see the additional pages, just to give you the ability to do it rather than have to go through us. So
good.
But you'll have only the admin users will be able to give someone an admin user.
Good. So we don't want them to play around in the admin stuff. Good. Yeah.
And what are the levels that you can put it in? Administrator, normal user, and something just reading, or what are the different levels?
So at the moment, it's just a normal user, and then I think it's called a super admin. A normal user, and then an admin user. We did used to have a version which was a kind of read only, so you couldn't edit anything, which I think we removed in the end. But it's something that we could, again, if it's helpful, we could bring back in. I think we did in the end. It was, well, at least for us, it was so infrequently used that it caused problems because people were accidentally added to it and then could edit things and then got irritated. So in the end, we removed it. But I think so at the minute there's just the two. But if it's helpful to have something like a read only privilege, then that's something we can look at as well.
And the admin is the general admin so they see the two columns on the left side, or is it just the admin for the organization? So there's one who's in charge of the project and wants different things. So it's just the administration now is completely over Judy's Bicycle, and they can go into all the things. So we want to give everyone only the normal user level.
Yeah, so I think the normal user level, in terms of the organizations, it's kind of all the same. So if you get added to an account, you can you'll only be able to see these 4 pages, but you can add data, you can edit things, delete things, all that kind of stuff. Then the admin, like I said, the admin privilege, you can see these additional pages and look at other people's accounts. So I think, but the default is that the normal users or people setting up an account will just have the the normal user access, and really only the people, say for JB, the only people that have admin accounts are basically me and I think 2 or 3 other people in the team, just because we're the people that run and administrate the tool. So it's kind of up to you in terms of how many, but I would say only among the people leading the project should really have the admin privileges. The normal users should just log in as normal. Yeah,
that makes sense. Very well. It's an impressive tool. It really is. Could you just that we see it, show us a data set with more data, just that we see it once?
Because I'll log in. I'll log into the normal version, because it does look largely the same. So just out of if I get off this, just so you can see. So let's get confused with this. I've got so many accounts on this. So this is a kind of test account that we have. So again, I mean, just a flag. So like I said, on here, there's a page called Creative Green Certification, which is a service that we provide. And again, this is a page that isn't on the German tool, again, because it's not relevant in this context, but just to clarify that. So if I go onto here, so this is a test account, but this doesn't go back as far as I thought it did, actually. But yeah, there's a few years of data here, and again, so this is for kind of all the buildings that are on this account. And in the case of here, there's loads of stuff actually. So there's an office. Again, this is all testing data, museum, and events, 3 theatres, and again, you can select an individual theatre. You can select the different metrics if you want to. I hope the data's on here. Data's missing for one of them, but yeah, and you can kind of toggle between the information that is listed, which is good. And then in terms of nothing there, in terms of the again, if I go onto here, this is what it might look like on the data page if you've got lots of data. So again, this is different buildings with different years of data listed, that kind of goes back for multiple years, which is kind of helpful. Yeah.
Great. And the colors are nice, different colors.
Yeah, the colors have like a mind. Seems to have a mind of their own. I feel like every time I look at them, I look at them, I'm like, I don't remember them being that color. But
and can you show me the benchmarks again?
Yes. So
this is lovely.
So you can see these before, but these are the benchmarks listed on here. So what you can see is. So this is for an office, but there's also benchmarks for a museum's performing, I think it's performing arts venue, and an event, and they're all based on metrics. So the buildings is floor area. So what you see here is you'll see basically your data for electricity, gas, and water, and then a comparison against the benchmark, which is an orange. Again, of a building of a similar size. So again, this is mainly helpful just to say a lot of time people to come in and have a bit of point of comparison, because often people say, they enter the footprint and then they say, I don't know what that means. They get they have a carbon footprint figure. Like, is that good? Is that bad? Even with the consumption figures, and even just a helpful way is often it's a good way of people flagging that they've entered something wrong. So even for this, on this example, this water one, they're way over the benchmark for a building of their size. So chances are it might just be that they've entered the data wrong, but it's helpful. It's a helpful way of kind of seeing.
So the German data will then be compared against the data sets you collected over the last years. So they will see it once they typed in their data.
So the benchmarks, so these aren't, I guess that's another thing to flag, is that these aren't live benchmarks pulling from all the data. So we did a bit like the we did an analysis, and we do an update of these benchmarks every couple of years based on the data on the tools, but they're not kind of pulling live as such from day to day in terms of what people are entering. They're based on a set chunk of data that we produce for the benchmarks, which we update every couple of years. So I think it might be when you went to the door before, Jacob, but we were saying about it would be great to think about benchmarks for Germany, but thinking about you do need a decent set of data to kind of produce them. So it's kind of thinking about how much that might be, or
how big, from your experiences, should a data, how many data sets we would need to have a kind of benchmarky situation? Is it like 100 or something, or
I think at least, I think probably a lot more actually.
500.
I'll have a look. I can't remember how many we used in the last iteration, but because I think the problem is it's not just people reporting, but it's kind of having good data that is actually usable, because
and cleared.
Because often we'd obviously check all the data anyway, and so many things would get marked off for being inaccurate and things like that. So it's you need a decent number of people reporting, I think, even to then knock it down to a good set of data that you trust, I guess, that you would work with.
Yeah, good, understand.
So that was, sorry, I know we've that's taken a little longer than intended, but that's kind of the main features, as it were, in terms of what's on the tools, and a bit about the admin side of stuff. But I hope that's helpful in terms of an overview of kind of what it does and how it works and what's there. So I hope that's helpful. But if people do have individual questions and things, do feel free to get in touch with me. And obviously it's a work in progress in terms of the pilot side, so we can keep people posted on it. But I think that sounds, I think that's good.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions? Or is it good for now? Thank you first, Will. I know it's an impossible task to run through such a tool in such a short period of time.
No, there's no problem.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Do you guys have experiences with different browsers? Like oftentimes these kind of things, if someone uses something unintended, it shoots everything apart.
We've had, I'd say I'm not sure. I mean, we've had some feedback where, again, someone has, used a certain browser and something has looked strange, and we've kind of had, and we've kind of addressed that with our developers. I think it's been, I say over the last couple of years, it's been more ad hoc, of like random occasions where something appears strange, but there hasn't been a problem where a particular browser has caused an issue kind of consistently, I guess, as it were. I was thinking the past couple of years, there's been a couple of things where someone has flagged something, but it's always been one of those ones where hard to identify whether it's the browser, whether it's just something in the tool. So I think there hasn't been any major issues with different browsers as far as I can remember in the time that I've been involved.
We got some differences in the translation with the German. We got the Üs and Ös and the Umlaute. I don't know what the English version is. Our columns with some points over it, and that are not in the English, and they are sometimes problematic with some browsers and with automatically translations and something like that. And we have to take a look at that.
We did run through every translation manually again. It's not, but you're right. It might make sense to move from Ü to UE, right? That's what you're saying.
No, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that some browsers, when it's from an English, when the background is in English programming, and it goes on to the German, then on the code of the programming is not in the same way that these can be put in onto the German sites, and not all browsers support the translation on programming level.
Okay. I think we'll find that out in the pilot phase latest. Daniela, are you there? Are you happy?
Yeah, I'm still there, and yes, I'm also happy. It was really impressive to see the tool, and yeah, now I have a much more better image from what will happen. And I think I have also a couple of questions. I know to make some notice, but I think it's not for now.
Okay.
It's about my favorite. It's called data security.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah,
we have,
got some
yeah,
too.
I think maybe we have to talk about this, not maybe in the
Yeah.
pilot phase, but when Jakob, you know, when we
Okay.
tried to start at the project, we also had this trouble, and we had to see who is the admin, where is the data, where is it sent to, and it's maybe not for the pilot phase. We can have a special arrangement then with the 5 or 8 institutions who want to share in this phase with us. But then when we really want to start at the end of the year or next year with an official launch of the bicycle for Germany, of Judas Bicycle for Germany, we have to think about this maybe, to be safe. So this is from my side, from the financial side, from the sponsor side, and and I have some other things. What is the difference between the pilot version and maybe a main version? What can be updates and things like that? But I think this is too early now. For me, it was really helpful that you share this information now with me, and that I have an impression of what we're talking now. Now we have our conference on Tuesday, and I think many people who are interested in this tool, and this is really good news. And and I think the next steps will follow, and I'm looking forward.
Cool. Will, I have one last, Daniela, we will discuss on that definitely. Will, do you know when Chiara will be back? Because she said she will join us on Tuesday, but she seems to be on holiday. Do you know when she will be back?
So I think she's I think that is all good for Tuesday as far as I know.
Good.
I haven't really seen her this week because we've been doing some, well, she's been on leave, but also we've been doing some training which she's been very head down on, so I haven't really spoken to Chiara this week, but
because her reply says she will be back like on Monday, so it's all good. It's all good. She said yes, and I trust her.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's all good for next week. Yeah,
cool. Guys, then I'm done for now with everything. Thank you, Will. Great. Let me wrap that up. I'm so much looking forward to having that thing out in the green, because it's so needed, and I'm looking forward to that very much.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And like I said, if there are other questions, let me know, or if they come through you, Jacob. But otherwise, probably be in touch, and we'll speak again soon. But no, thanks, and hopefully it was helpful.
It was.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Will. But can you stay online for just 2 more minutes? Because as I said earlier, I do have two or three things that I did not know what you meant with, or what is meant with. A couple of translations.
Okay, so I'm off. Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Will.
Neato. Bye. All right, because I don't know what a spawning translation is supposed to be.
Spawning, was that something that was listed? Ooh,
yes, spawn translations and translation spawned, and I don't know how a translation can be spawned, or is it automatically generated? Is that what it's meant?
Hang on, let me just have a look. I imagine it might be that it was originally generated automatically, because I think that was, so nothing should, if you've edited something, nothing should nothing should be overridden by an automatic translation or anything like that. But I think maybe it just means that it was originally done by auto translate in terms of what was listed in the field. But
okay.
But I might need to check that. I'm not 100%.
Or, for example, I don't know what a kite mark is. What is that supposed to be?
Oh, so again, kite mark is a page that is hidden. So I might try and see if I can remove it. So the kite mark is something that we have on our site, which a page which actually hasn't launched yet, but is something to do with our certification process. But basically, it's the page is hidden at the moment. But like I said, I think that's the problem with the translation thing, is that there's a couple of those things just still are listed in the translations, even though obviously they're not on your version. So I might, to avoid confusion, I might see if I can remove those, just because like Highmark and someone mentioned that ACE admin page. There's a couple that you can't actually see the end result, so it's probably a bit confusing.
I mean, 90% of the tool has been translated. So what we can do is do the pilot phase the way it's now and see if any weird messages or anything weird pops up and then translate it on the go. Maybe, because I don't know of the couple of things that I still have. I don't know what is going to be hidden and what not.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good approach, because I think like I said, we did a similar thing with a group in Canada, and it was kind of, once people test it, it's the best way. Yeah, it's the best way to find stuff that doesn't, like, because even through that, it was weird things where like someone spotted like, the label on a graph was, it's like things that you I don't know, just looking at a broad picture, things might get missed basically, or even just, so I think the value of people testing it, I think is
to see where the mistakes are,
to see if there's mistakes or if there's things that don't make sense, because I think otherwise it's hard to, and partly because like we said, just the way the translations are done, that you can't kind of directly see where they're linked on the page. It's all just a massive list of text. You can't really see where that is on the main site. So it's a little bit tricky. So I think that's why the testing is is really helpful. Yeah.
All right. No, do you have anything else that needs to be done until next week?
I don't think so. So I need to
the emission factors, right? But we're working on that right now.
Oh, so the factors, yeah. So I need to have a look at what Jacob sent me, and then I need to check in about the the data privacy stuff again with Alison, because I know that's something that needs to be translated, but I just need to again check what's going on with that, because I haven't had a chance to speak to Alison because she's been very busy. So I just need to check in with her on that. But I think apart from that, I think we're
where are we standing with the embedding of the tool and the logos and stuff like that? What I sent to you?
Oh, so the logos, the developer's putting the logos on at the moment, so I sent them to him, so he's doing that. And I sent him your point. Thanks about the widget stuff. That's really helpful. So I've sent that to him as well to feedback. So hopefully I'll catch up with him today about his take on that. But I think that would be really helpful. Like I said, because it sounds like it's it's feasible within something is feasible within the budget. I think he just again a bit more specific. I think there's just different ways of doing it, basically.
Of course.
So it was a bit of that, but I've sent that to him, so hopefully I'll try and speak with him today about it. But he's got the logos, so that should be on, and I'll send you that if that's up.
Okay. I mean, we still have a couple of days, so we can wait and see if the developer answers today, and if not, we can catch up on Monday or Tuesday and see how things are then. If that sounds good for you.
Yeah. No, that sounds perfect.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much, Will, for your
Cheers.
time and your effort. Have a nice one. A good weekend, especially.
Yeah. No, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Will.
Cheers.
Good one.
Speak soon.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Gianni, wir sehen uns gleich in Person, ne?
Ich denke schon.
Alles klar.